In the 6th year of my marriage to William Anderson, he handed me divorce papers. I'd get the money, I'd get the kids, he just wanted a clean slate and a free ride. To be honest, I had no reason to refuse him. How could I expect a man who didn't even care about money to love me anymore? On the day of my daughter Luna's 5th birthday, William Anderson returned from a social engagement and handed me a piece of divorce paper. He took off his suit and sank tiredly into the center of the couch, rubbing his temples on both sides with both hands to try to make himself look more awake. Take a look at it and sign it if you have no problems. There wasn't too much emotion in his low voice. It was as if it was just an ordinary negotiation in the business world. It's a relief for you, for me, and for the kids. My hand shook as I squeezed the agreement, and throughout, his gaze never lingered on mine for a moment. The meal and sobering soup warmed in the kitchen. Haven't had a chance to bring it out yet. The piece of birthday cake that Luna cut for him remains in a prominent place on the dining table. Behind the couch was a picture of our family. He wrapped his arms around my daughter and me, smiling openly. He was a far cry from the man who looked so tired. Before this, I thought he was just too busy at work. So he was socializing more and more and coming home for shorter and shorter periods of time. I didn't complain. I know how hard it is to raise a family. The flat we live in and the private school Luna goes to depend on his hard work. At first, he would talk to me about things in the workplace. Luna was still young. I had to be distracted from looking after the child. And when I was done with the task at hand, the baby went to sleep. William Anderson stopped talking to me. But we were still intimate. He would take me in his arms at night and exclaim, "Good job, wife. When the income stabilizes, we'll hire a nanny." Later, when he was working more, we hired an aunt. We've had aunts, too. But William Anderson was very particular about his life. The aunts we chose were not perfect. They're noisy, they have poor boundaries, they're not good cooks. In any case, having an aunt in the house. For him, it's like being in a cage, it's uncomfortable. He never said so. He would just go home and lock himself in his study. He would just go home and shut himself up in his study. He would just take a couple of bites and leave. Until one night when he was deep in love, his chin lightly against my neck. He said in a loving tone, "I really miss the time when we were alone as a family of 3. I'm a Leo, and I'm in love. The happiness of my family and the emotional needs of my loved ones are above all else for me. Above all else." So I took over the household chores again. He took care of the outside, I took care of the inside. It's been a long time coming. Why did you get divorced? Is work not going too well these days? I stumbled a bit and dragged out a chair to sit in front of him. Carefully, trying to find some reasons for him. 4 years of love, 6 years of marriage. 10 of the best years of our lives, all of them together with each other and a loved child. It's just getting better. I don't believe he's ready to leave at this moment. William Anderson finally raised his eyes and looked at me. Calmly and helplessly. "Amanda Miller, I'm sorry. I don't love you anymore." His brief words hit me like a stone, hard on my heart. It also shattered the last vestiges of my self-deluded expectations. I wanted to scream and cry. I wanted to hysterically question him out loud. Why? But I just sat there in my chair, pursing my lips in the cold. Luna was still sleeping and I was afraid of scaring her. I laughed softly to myself. I slowly unfolded the agreement in my hand. William Anderson was generous, giving me the house, the joint savings, and Luna. Except for the car he drove, he was close to netting the house. "You haven't been on the job all these years, and with the house and savings left to you, it'll be a transition for a while. Luna is still young and a girl, so it will be easier for her to stay with you. Of course, I'll only pay more, not less, in alimony. If there are no other questions, you sign it, and tomorrow we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau and get it done." He thoughtfully explained some of the terms of the agreement, as if to tell me, "Don't worry about signing it, I'm not treating you too poorly." Looking at the person in front of me, I was in a trance. Between me and him. How did he and I go from being intimate lovers to the point where we have no words for each other now? "It's Luna's birthday, did you bring her a present?" Forcing back the ripples inside, I looked over at him. Asking an ill-timed question. At that, his face froze and his eyes quickly looked around. The arrangement in the living room, the cake on the dining table. All of them were reminding him that our daughter turned 5 today. But if he had taken one more look after entering the house, I wouldn't have found it so ironic. I might have understood if he didn't love me anymore. But now, he doesn't even love his daughter anymore. On this beautiful day. He can't wait. He wants to end our marriage. He wants to take a break from our little family. I'm sorry, I've been so busy at work. I'll make up a gift for her tomorrow. As I recall, Luna loves Princess Elsa's Barbie dolls, right? Tomorrow. No, William Anderson, that was Luna's wish when she was 3. I interrupted, suddenly feeling physically and mentally exhausted. For whatever reason you want a divorce, I agree. But William Anderson, there's no going back. Have you thought about it? There was a look of doubt in his eyes. Or I was too calm to ask for confirmation. I didn't break down and cry. For a moment, he didn't know how to react. But a moment. He quirked his lips again in relief. Amanda Miller, I'm happy that you can figure it out, even if the inappropriate people are forced to be side by side. In the middle of his unfinished sentence, I grabbed a pen and signed my name at the bottom of the agreement. Immediately next to it was William Anderson's large name, signed long ago. It was strong, bold, and uncluttered. I seemed to be able to imagine his pleasure in signing the document. I was sad and dead. William Anderson left while it was still night. William Anderson left at night, taking the signed agreement, his papers, and Dover with him. Dover was our dog, a good boy and a favorite. He took all the important things with him, except for me and my daughter. He even forgot to say goodbye to our daughter. He couldn't wait to get on with his new life. I stood on the balcony of the living room and looked downstairs. A pretty figure got out of William Anderson's car and trotted up to him, smoothly picking up Dover in his arms. Unexpectedly, Dover, who was always afraid of strangers, did not struggle. They whispered a few words. Not long after, William Anderson raised his head and glanced cautiously in the direction of the house. Then he covered the woman and went inside the car. It turns out it wasn't a case of not being in love, but of being in love with someone else. I tossed and turned through the longest night of my life. The next day, I gave Luna a day off, holding her together, to the Civil Affairs Bureau. Upon seeing William Anderson waiting here, Luna's eyes lit up and she excitedly ran towards him with small steps. Daddy. William Anderson's face was a bit ugly when he saw Luna. He cast a reproachful glance at me. Turning his head again, he duly replaced it with a fatherly brand of doting smile. He crouched down and opened his arms to hug Luna all over. Daddy, why didn't you come home last night? Mom and I were waiting for you to blow out the candles. Mommy said Daddy worked hard at work. I left Daddy a piece of the sweetest cake. Daddy can eat it when he comes home, yo. Luna was young and unsophisticated. Her innocent and happy voice pestered William Anderson with questions. William Anderson held her in his arms, and after some playful moments, he casually promised that, when he had time, he would take her to the children's playground, to the Ocean Museum, to the zoo. Luna was happy. Maybe William Anderson doesn't care about this short time together. But Luna, she needs her daddy's care and affirmation. Before she went to sleep yesterday, I promised her, when she opens her eyes, she'll see Daddy. The clerk in the divorce hall was seeing couples with children for the first time. Eyes in the middle of the 3 of us, back and forth a few times. At the moment I was a little glad that Luna couldn't read yet. She thought Mom and Dad had something important to take care of. Dutifully, she sat in a waiting chair and didn't make any noise. The marriage mediator had just opened his mouth when he was interrupted by William Anderson. I'm in a hurry, so I'd appreciate it if you'd hurry up with the process. The mediator's mouth, which was open, twitched a few times and eventually closed. She gave me a deep look, and when she saw that I was calm, she sighed lightly and asked no more questions. William Anderson took a picture after getting the divorce papers. He seldom sends his friend's circle, probably with other people have accounted for. I'll be here in 30 days. He lowered his head and operated his iPhone while instructing me. It turns out, there really is someone. Divorce is as simple and casual as eating a meal. No waves. So, he rightfully felt that I should do the same. Seeing that I did not respond, he frowned and raised his face. Next time, don't bring your daughter here, I won't change my mind because of a child. And don't bother with any other ideas, go out more when you have time, don't be stuck in your 3/4 of the house. This is the first time I have a new perception of men's indifference, no matter how deep the love is when we love each other. Once you don't love each other anymore. Even if I didn't say a word, he thought I was hiding something. I pressed the emotion for a long time, finally cannot be tensed. I raised my shaking palm and slapped him hard. While he was still in a daze, I hugged Luna. Quickly walking towards the outside. Luna, be good, Daddy has some work to do, Mommy will take you home first. Luna looked backward with some confusion and then looked at me. She nodded her head obediently. I'll go wherever Mommy goes. It's often said on the internet that a precipitous emotional collapse can leave a person in a state of endless self-doubt. In the past, I didn't think much of it and lived my life the same way without anyone. After William Anderson left. After William Anderson's departure, I was as busy as I was during the day, keeping the house and Luna's studies in order. Busyness would make me forget my grief for a short while. At night, after putting Luna to bed, the quiet time alone was particularly difficult. The psychological self-healing of a decade-long relationship that had collapsed and disintegrated overnight was no less than a post-disaster reconstruction. Several times late at night, I stood barefoot on the balcony, opened the window, and let the cold wind blow me to pieces. I couldn't finish the farewell letter I had left for Luna in my iPhone memo, nor could I continue to write it. It was at that moment that I realized. The pain of leaving Luna far exceeded the sadness of separating from Guyenji. Marriage, in fact, is just the same thing. There is no law that states that Guyenji has to love me for the rest of my life. The walls of the walled city have collapsed, and it's time for the people inside to walk out. Perhaps he has not yet obtained the final documents. Guyenji did not inform his parents of the decision to divorce. Otherwise, according to the nature of Gu's father and mother, 80% of the distribution of property will be unforgiving. I have only one relative in this world, Luna. I have no one to talk to about my life decisions. Guyenji used to love me because of my situation. Now, because he knows I'm alone, it's easy to leave. So it was easy to leave without having to explain to anyone. On the 10th day of the cooling-off period, I had a call from an unfamiliar number asking me to meet up. It was a young female voice on the other side, and I could roughly guess who it was. But I didn't have the heart to meet her. The failure of my marriage with Guyenji is not essentially the fault of a third party. But she was unforgiving, unable to hold back the joy of her impending victory. Sent me a picture. His favorite person today is me, only I can awaken his joy and desire. In the picture, Guyenji's bare chest, sleeping with an insatiable appetite. The slightly sideways neck was left with a conspicuous strawberry mark. Under the shadow of the light and dark lamps, a smooth and slender thigh surrounded his waist. The atmosphere is more charming than charming. Although the heart has been prepared. But when the evidence was laid out naked in front of me, my heart still could not restrain itself from twitching and tearing. I deliberately averted my eyes, forcing myself not to stare at the picture. But my heart still turned over like nausea. After a long time, my mind calmed down a little. I held up my stiff fingers and slowly tapped out the words. You say he loves you, has he ever spent money for you? If he hasn't spent money for you, how can he prove that he loves you? The message passed, but my heart was on edge. In less than 10 minutes, a series of pictures popped up, one after another. There were Hermes bags, Valentino shoes, Cartier bracelets, Omega watches. Of course he loves me, he says I deserve the best of everything. I know that William Anderson can earn a lot of money these 2 years, but I didn't ask in detail how much. At one time, I had absolute trust in him. Nowadays, looking at the pictures of various luxury goods sent from the opposite side, I am glad that the other party is naive and stupid enough. At the same time, I feel ridiculous for myself all these years. I feel sorry for his hard work, sympathize with his feelings, and painstakingly manage a comfortable and cozy family environment. Instead, he wandered away from our family and used resources that should have belonged to our little family to please another woman. After backing up and keeping the things the other woman sent me, one by one, I asked her, "Why did you want to see me?" A few minutes later, I received an ultrasound picture. Because I'm pregnant and it's a son, I feel the need to recommunicate about the distribution of your property. You have been a housewife for 6 years. Naturally, you don't know how hard it is to work and earn money in the outside world. The big flat you are living in now, even if it is really distributed to you, can you afford to provide for it? She had a point and had obviously done her homework. Now our name is the most valuable is this house, a line of riverfront large flat, across the river is the center of the city. The listing price in this same neighborhood was once 12 million. But what does this have to do with her? When I got together with Gu Yanji, he was also broke and shy. When we first graduated, we lived in a damp basement in Los Angeles and ate expired instant noodles. Even when Luna was born, we didn't have a house of our own. I was able to endure the bitterness of marriage, and I deserved the sweetness that followed. What's more, they're even coming out with illegitimate children today. I won't give up a single cent of what belongs to Luna. Hold on to the man beside you and don't be too possessive of other people's property. Otherwise, I'll refuse to be there for the divorce next month. I can afford the time, but I don't know if the baby in your belly can afford to wait. After the message was sent, I blacked out her number. I just couldn't maintain the peace of mind to keep going back and forth with her. On the 18th day of the cooling-off period, Gu Yanji's parents still knew about our impending divorce. Early in the morning on the weekend, the two old men came to the house. After entering, Gu's father sighed deeply and went to sit on the sofa. Gu's mother, on the other hand, stood at the foyer, her eyes glancing around the entire house, and then sank her face. Why didn't you inform your father and me about such a big deal as a divorce? Now the divorce license has not even been obtained, you have cleaned up the house, half of the feast of things are not left. I didn't agree to it when we got married, it was Bonsai Ji who insisted on marrying you, I really didn't misread you, people without parents really don't have the slightest bit of family education. She was as mean as ever. Once upon a time I was her daughter-in-law, she had something to admonish a few sentences, I will take it as a breeze, and let it go. But she shouldn't have, bringing up my deceased parents, to humiliate me. Turning back, I slammed the 2 cups of hot tea in my hand in front of her. The sound of the glass breaking apart as it hit the ground was particularly harsh in the early morning. The hot tea splashed out in all directions, frightening Gu's mother into taking a few steps back, her jaw dropping. Gu's father was also so shocked that he stood up from the sofa, glaring at me with a furious expression on his face. What do you want? Against you? This is the house my son bought, it's not your turn to make a scene here. With his backing, Gu's mother also reacted and shouted. Good for you, you used to be so meek and docile, but this is what you really look like. Do not respect the elders, do not emphasize filial piety. Fei Yanji finally came to his senses, this marriage is divorced good. The house was bought by Yanji, who worked hard to support you for so many years. If you have a conscience, you should leave now. Without Gu Yanji's mediation, the 2 people in front of them have nothing to worry about. They are here today, not worried about our small family breaking up after the divorce, but afraid that I will take advantage of it. I couldn't help but snicker. Pacing to the island table, leaning calmly. Divorce is a matter between the 2 of us, Gu Yanji and I. I'm not obligated to inform the 2 of you. As for our couple's marital property, how it's divided, it's not for you to worry about. If you have any objections, let Gu Yanji come and talk to me in person. Also, those who betray their families during marriage are truly uneducated. As a couple, I've done my best and have a clear conscience. There's no reason for me to end up being let down by Gu Yanji, provoked by his mistress, and bullied by his parents. Seeing my tough attitude, Gu's father frowned deeply. A slap on the high table next to him seemed to demonstrate his majesty as an elder. He had been a junior leader in the system for his entire life, and usually hated other people's rebuttals in his speeches. Unfortunately, today is not in his unit, I am not the group of unlucky people below him. I rippled, pointing to the front door. If there's nothing else, take your time. Gu's father's eyes widened at the sight, and he rushed to me like a fierce god, looking as if he was about to make a move. I pointed behind him without fear. In front of the island table was the location of the surveillance camera, and his every word and action was recorded. If you mess up today, I promise, the video will be mailed to your flat tomorrow. In the meantime, I will call the police. My cold gaze met his angry eyes, without flinching. Without Gu Yanji to hold the umbrella for me, I realized that I had no fear of the rain at all. At the time of the stalemate, Gu Yanji made a rare trip back home. He skillfully positioned himself at the entrance hall, taking off his shoes and preparing to change into comfortable, lightweight house shoes. The moment he pushed open the door to the shoe cabinet, he was a bit startled, and then he tightened his brows. The original place where his slippers were placed was already empty. He cast a puzzled look at me. "I'm sorry, I cleared out all your things. After all, it's mine and my daughter's home and I don't want anyone else's stuff there." He stared at me for half a second, only the movement of changing his shoes seemed to freeze in the foyer. Following that, he put on his original shoes without changing his face and walked in with a big stride. Gu's father saw his son step in, coldly grunted, and resumed his seat back on the sofa. Gu's mother had already yelled, "Banquet G, look at the good wife you married, eating and drinking your food, but now you have hardened your wings. I don't care if you guys get divorced, just this house, she can't take it away. There's no such thing as a good thing in the world. You stretch your legs and give birth to a cheap daughter, and then you want to take away tens of millions of dollars, and you're not afraid of dying." Hearing Gu's mother's words, Gu Yanji's face was in disbelief and his frown deepened. He probably never knew that such vulgar and unpleasant words would come out of his own mother's mouth. "Mom and Dad, you guys go back first, we'll take care of things between me and Amanda Miller on our own. And Luna, she's my daughter too. I don't want to hear those words again." Gu's mother stepped forward with hatred. "You've worked hard to save up all your money for this house, and now you say you don't want it. Where will you live? Where will you live in the future? You let my eldest grandson." Her voice came to an abrupt end in Gu Yanji's suddenly harsh eyes, realizing that she had said the wrong thing. Her face snapped a bit. I clasped my hands in front of my chest and, mockingly watching them cover up for each other in front of me. As a parent, knowing that their son has abandoned the family, unkind and unrighteous, but do not feel the slightest bit of shame, but also want to take everything from my side. I should have thought, what kind of family will raise what kind of children? If Gu Yanji was really honest, he wouldn't have cheated on his wife. The reason why he was so generous in choosing to give up the joint house and property. It's just that he wants to end the marriage quickly and decently. He is now in his early 30s, is young and rich age. This bit of stuff, in his eyes, is nothing. Thinking of this, I coldly looked at the family of 3 in the room. I've been a housewife for 6 years, but I'm not a fool. Luna's interest class will be ending soon, within 10 minutes, please leave my house. And Gu Yanji, before your company's shareholders meeting, if you don't want news to spread about company executives cheating on their husbands, getting bigamously married, as well as having illegitimate children, then control the people around you and don't bother me anymore." Ignoring his shocked, flustered look, I stared at him and said, word for word, "You're right, ending this disgusting marriage sooner rather than later would be a relief for me, and for Luna." The room was silent, even Gu's mother, who was always talkative, had subsided. After I bluntly poked the truth, Gu's father's face was a little embarrassed, and he got up and flung his sleeves to leave first. Mother Gu also grabbed her bag and followed closely behind. Looking at each other. Obviously 2 people who know each other very well, but only a few days, but went to the point of looking at each other without words. After a long time, he returned to a calm demeanor and sighed. "I'm sorry. I didn't expect them to bother you. I want a divorce, not because of anyone else, but, in our marriage, there is no love today. I can't communicate with you about my work, you don't pay attention to my hobbies, and since having Luna, your whole focus in life is on your children. I recognize that you are a good mother and a good wife, but what I want is a spiritual soulmate." His voice remained methodical, not thinking he had made a mistake, but instead blaming me for the source of it all. If this had been said to me on the night he filed for divorce, I would have reflected on my own problems and felt guilty about my negligence towards him. But right now, I just feel the irony. A change of heart is a change of heart, cheating is cheating, no matter how many reasons you have, it can't change the nature of things. If you really think it's nothing, then why cover it up? At first you should have been honest and told me you were in love with someone else. Now that you have an illegitimate child, why are you pretending to be so noble and generous? His face was a little hard to see after I relentlessly picked apart the truth. "Amanda Miller, I told you it was all my fault, it has nothing to do with her or that child, and that child will not be a bastard." He sounded a little anxious, taking the fault onto himself. As if this was the only way to show off his gentlemanly uprightness and honesty. I threw my head back and laughed out loud. The more I laughed, the more maniacal I became. He took 2 steps toward me and then stopped, the flicker of concern in his eyes fading away. Don't be like that, you know, I didn't treat you badly. You don't have to worry, the divorce agreement won't change again, I just want a smooth divorce now. I also hope that you can remember that we are a couple and not talk nonsense to the public, so that we can get along. I nodded. Then I really thank you. Get lost. He looked stunned, a little surprised by my reaction. I slammed a framed picture of the 3 members of the family on top of him. What, do you think I'm going to kneel here and beg you not to leave? Get lost. Seeing that I didn't look like I was faking, he was a bit resentful. He looked at the broken picture frames on the ground, his expression dark and uncertain. He left me with a sentence, contact me if you have any problems. Then he turned around and left. I threw the door shut just as the hem of his coat left the house. The process of breaking up and seeing his character. Let me completely get rid of his charm. I found an agent I knew well and listed the house. When the little girl came to the door to take pictures, she stared at the vibrant flowers and plants on the terrace with a puzzled look on her face. Sister, you bought this house only 3 years ago. From the big to the small decoration and arrangement, it is obvious that you have put a lot of thought into it. Are you sure you want to make an offer? With such a good location and house type, once you put it on the market, you'll probably find a home soon. Listening to her words full of regret, I raised my eyes, my gaze scrutinizing back and forth throughout the house. It's true that a lot of thought went into it. It was still in a rough state when I first saw it. After getting the keys, William Anderson couldn't wait to lead me to the place. We were in a house full of concrete wires. We screamed with joy, hope, and embraced. Together we envisioned a happy time in our future. William Anderson has a busy schedule, so he asked for what he wanted. I took care of all the other renovations. Changing the design, setting the style, choosing the materials, grinding the price, coordinating the property neighbors. I still get numb when I think about the tediousness of it all. Well, it took a whole year to finally create a home that our family of 3 are satisfied. Here. William Anderson's favorite den and bar. Luna's favorite children's play area. And the kitchen and patio where I spend a lot of time. I used to think we'd be happy here for the rest of our lives. Now, 3 short years later, things have changed and all that hard work has gone down the drain. The man of the house is gone. But there's no shortage of people eyeing this house. Let's just give it up for the sake of a clean slate in the future. After sending off the agent, I returned to the living room and turned on my computer. I just logged into my social media account. Countless messages from the background urging for more work poured in. Yes. I am a full-time mom. I'm also a self-published blogger who doesn't show her face. After Luna started kindergarten, I had more time during the day. I tried to get a job, but after 4 years at home, I was not competitive in the job market. Then, I started figuring out the self-publishing path. After William Anderson went to work and Luna went to school, I began to take pictures of my home and posted them on the internet. Surprisingly, it attracted a lot of attention. So far, I have gained a number of regular fans. There are even advertisers looking for me. At first, I didn't have the courage to tell William Anderson because I was afraid that I wouldn't be able to achieve anything. Later on, I asked William Anderson what he thought about self-media bloggers. He skimmed his lips and said in a disdainful tone, "It's all just a trick to get people's attention, to make money and make their privacy known to the public, where is the real life?" I wanted to distinguish with him. He waved his hand, signaling me that he had work to do. Later, I thought that if he paid close attention, he would always find out. I would be proud to tell him that I have my own little business. But it's been so long. I've changed my equipment several times. William Anderson never noticed anything. Maybe he did, but he didn't think it was any of his business, so he didn't need to look into it. By mistake, this has become my way out. 2 days before the cooling-off period. Luna had a sudden high fever of unknown cause. I stayed at the hospital all day and night with her, giving her injections and medication. I watched her face reddened by the repeated high fever and her body covered with rashes. I was both heartbroken and blaming myself. When Luna woke up, she called out to her dad in a hoarse voice. She wanted to see her dad. I can understand that when a child is vulnerable, she wants her mom and dad to be with her. I dialed William Anderson's number without hesitation, but every time it rang a few times, it was disconnected. In desperation, I left him a message and gently reassured Luna that Daddy would come to see her later. From 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. I did not hear back from William Anderson, nor did I see anyone else come. My heart sank once again. Luna was in much better spirits after her fever broke, and at just the slightest windy movement at the door, she looked out with open, expectant eyes. But every time, she was greeted with disappointment. I couldn't bear the thought of her losing her mind, so I made another call to William Anderson. This time it was answered quickly. I held back my anger and asked calmly, "Did you see the phone call and message I sent you yesterday?" The opposite side paused and spoke slowly. "Yes, it's normal for children to get sick and have a fever, there's no need to make a fuss. How is it? Is Luna's fever gone? I'll go home to check on her after the process is done tomorrow." With the iPhone pressed to his ear, William Anderson's light and breezy voice was still coming through. Luna sat on the hospital bed and looked at me with open eyes. "Mommy, is Daddy coming over? I want to talk to Daddy." I was hesitant to hand her my iPhone. Instead, someone else's voice came from the other end of the phone at the right time. "Honey, my stomach hurts." The delicate, cloying female voice made my ears uncomfortable. William Anderson, however, seemed to have forgotten what was happening on the other side of the phone and immediately took over her words. "Where does it hurt? Come on, let me rub it for you." His recklessness sent a bone-chilling chill down my spine. I hung up the phone and held Luna deeply in my arms. Fatherly love that has rotted away, don't want it. At 8 a.m., I arrived at the Civil Service Bureau on time. This time William Anderson was late. There was a look of surprise in his eyes when he saw me waiting. "How's Luna today?" He had the nerve to mention Luna. I wanted to slap him left and right. He seemed to want to say something else, but when he saw my cold face, he finally closed his mouth. Contrary to the low air pressure between us, the newlyweds, who were preparing to get married on the side, smiled sunny smiles. The young boy promised the girl that no matter how things change, his love for her will never change. The girl sweetly snuggled in the boy's shoulder, whispering, seemingly longing for a happy life after marriage. Gu Yanji was attracted by their voices and looked sideways for a long time. It wasn't until the caller sounded that he shook himself out of it, with a somewhat confused look in his eyes. He suddenly murmured towards me, "I'm sorry, Ian. Hurts in a relationship can never be said in a few words, and the disagreements between me and him can't be forgiven with a single apology." I just pretended that he didn't exist and got up, took the lead and went to the office, handing over the appropriate materials. After he walked to the seat beside me and sat down, the hand that was pinching the documents seemed to be a little hesitant. Seeing this, the clerk couldn't help but feel good about it. "Gentlemen, if you haven't thought it over." "Thank you, we've thought about it, we'll work hard to walk you through the process." I reached out and took the documents in his hand and pushed them in front of the clerk. Gu Yanji pursed his lips and said nothing. The process of exchanging the license was quick, and after exiting the hall, I didn't stay for a moment, heading in the direction of my home, leaving at a fast pace. It was William Anderson who stood in the same place, hesitating for a long time. On the way back, I received 2 messages from him. "Maybe it's not just me who's changed, you're changing too. You don't seem to be sorry to be separated from me." He seemed disappointed that he didn't get to see me heartbroken. This is probably the strange mentality of men, they lose interest after getting it, but remain possessive after discarding it. It seems that my life is only meaningful if I revolve around him. I did not reply to him. "From now on we are strangers, a treacherous person, it is not worth my trouble." After returning home, I sent all the evidence I had kept, all packaged, and sent to my lawyer. Since the other party provoked me, I should return the favor. William Anderson is generous, but I am not. Every penny he spent on his mistress and illegitimate child is our joint marital property, and I have the right to recover the portion that belongs to me and Luna. At the same time, I sent a message to the agent as well. $12,880,000, I agree, let's find time to sign the next contract as soon as possible. On the terrace in the evening, the sunlight was spreading all over the ground, and everything was just right. I put on full makeup and I put on a burgundy halter dress that I just bought today. I poured myself a small glass of red wine. Sitting in a rocking chair, surrounded by flowers. I shot my last video in this house. I made my first appearance as a single mom. From the sudden change in my marriage, to now accepting the separation with open arms. During this month, I have never told anyone about the uncertainty and helplessness in my heart. Now, facing the camera, facing the sunset. I hummed a little song with abandon and enthusiasm, dancing alone in the light. It's just like this. The light boat has already crossed 10,000 mountains. 11. When I woke up, the video exploded overnight. The original account with only 1 million followers rose to 3 million overnight. For a while, the topic of marriage freedom and women's independence continued to ferment. I received countless radio invitations and cooperation offers in my private messages. After explaining my refusal one by one, I took Luna with me and prepared to embark on a trip that belonged to the two of us. Children's feelings of love. Children's feelings of love come more from their parents' constant companionship. During William Anderson's absence for over a month, Luna was disappointed many times, and gradually, she didn't look forward to it so much anymore. And I began to realize that some emotions cannot be forced. If you don't have it, then you don't have it, and you don't have to create a false love. It's like William Anderson's promise to Luna of amusement parks, oceanariums, and animal worlds. It's just a blank check that he doesn't know when it will be honored. Instead of waiting for the promise to be honored, why don't you set sail and go to see a farther and more beautiful scenery? Luna will realize that the world is a big place. In addition to the playground in the city, there are also vast grasslands, boundless seas, and deserts. Before I left, I received a call from William Anderson. He seemed to be suppressing his anger, and his voice was low and questioning. Did you change the locks on your door? I was packing at my new place. I answered without a care in the world. No, I didn't. I sold the house. The voice on the other side of the table stuttered, and then anger spilled out. Who gave you permission to sell the house? I left you the house so that you and Luna could live well and comfortably here. What gives you the right to sell the house without my permission? I took my iPhone away from my ear and casually tossed it aside with the external player on. William Anderson, we're divorced, the house is mine, the decision to sell or not to sell is up to me, no need for your consent. If you're calling just to talk to me about this, I'm sorry, I'm very busy and don't have time to explain my personal affairs to you. There was a thud on the other end of the phone, as if he had hammered his fist against the wall. I sneered, listening to him go crazy. Amanda Miller, after 6 years as a couple, I really underestimated you. I even wonder if all of this today was in your premeditation. When we divorced, you didn't fight to make me harbor a sense of guilt and ceded all the property to you. And after the divorce, you came back to pursue everything. I stopped what I was doing and was amused. William Anderson, did I force you to cheat on me in your marriage? Do you think that all this is a handout from you? When I got pregnant, I was stuck in the upswing of my career. What did you say to me when I said to forget about it and wait before having a baby? You said, Amanda Miller, I want this baby, I want a family of 3, just the thought of having a wife and child waiting at home makes my life and my work worthwhile. In the 6 years since you graduated, you've gotten to where you are now. Do you ask yourself if you've worked hard to get to where you are now? My parents are gone, but the connections they left behind have been utilized by you to the fullest. Nowadays, everyone outside calls you Mr. Goo. Are you so proud that you have forgotten the way you came? After the output, there was no response from the other side. Only the sound of William Anderson's heavy, undulating breathing lingered in the room. I was about to hang up when his voice came again. Tone, I never meant to hurt you. Whether you wanted to or not, the damage you've done to me is an established fact. The opposite party sighed deeply. Ian, it's all my fault, just drop the charges against Emma, I'll transfer the money to you later, don't make things difficult for her. Emma is that girl, no wonder the other party had the guts to approach me to pick a fight, William Anderson is really in love. I smiled to myself. Sorry, everyone has to pay for their choices, no exceptions. After disconnecting the phone, I finished packing the rest of my bags. Went to the next room and woke up Luna. It was time for us to get going. 1 year later. Luna and I played from the south to the north of China. When we meet a place we like. We then stayed longer and stopped to enjoy life. Along the way, Luna saw many new things and made many new friends. She hasn't talked about her dad for a long time. I don't regret that I chose to take her along on this trip before she was in elementary school. We all need to be brave and quick to say goodbye to the past. While traveling, I've been updating my videos from time to time. From a full-time mom who takes care of her family day in and day out, to a travelogue where I am free to say goodbye with reckless freedom. I thought I would lose a group of hardcore fans, but I didn't expect to change my lifestyle. More and more people reacquainted with me. Someone left me a message. Seeing my sister's current state of life, I suddenly feel that marriage is no longer so terrible, no matter how. The right to choose is always in our own hands. When we love each other, I can be a full-time wife, gentle and considerate, day after day at home waiting for you. When I'm not in love, I'm just me, and I can live my life in any way I like. Yes, the new life is not scary. Even, it was more comfortable and happy than expected. I don't have to pay for anyone's emotions anymore. No more neglecting myself by considering other people's preferences. I no longer wait for my lover's return home night after night. During the trip, William Anderson called me many times, but I didn't answer most of them. Occasionally, when he suggested that he wanted to see Luna, I would ask Luna's opinion and talk to him. I didn't care about anything else. When my lawyer informed me that I had won the case in court, I was a little puzzled. I assumed that William Anderson would find a way to get that money to me before the trial. After all, he had balked at the idea that it was all his fault, not the girls. I was surprised at the way things turned out. I heard the lawyer say that the two of them were not married, and the child was not born, and then specifically, she is not very clear. I smiled and thanked her, not saying anything about it. After finishing the trip, at the airport where we arrived, was surprised to see William Anderson waiting at the pickup gate. Luna looked at the man waving his hands in front of her, and, somewhat overwhelmed, she grabbed the hem of my skirt and took 2 steps back, catching the change in her. William Anderson's face, which had been excited, was colored with despondency. Luna, it's Daddy. It's been such a long trip out, Daddy's missed you. Luna obediently called out to her dad and then stopped speaking. William Anderson looked at me helplessly. Welcome back, let me give you a ride home. I smiled and shook my head at him, pointing to the lads not far away. No need, my assistant is here to pick us up. He blanched, thinking I was snubbing him. It wasn't until the young boy stepped forward to take the bags from us that he reacted. Some surprise and panic surfaced on his face. Ian, let me give you a ride, there's just something I want to talk to you about. I was a little wary, the title of Ian was his term of endearment for me when we were in love. He hadn't called it that in a long time. I'm a little tired today, let's talk about something later. I held Luna and walked towards the car arranged by my assistant. William Anderson, in a panic, grabbed my sleeve. Yum, just half an hour, okay? His voice softened, vaguely begging. I raised my hand and looked at the time. 15 minutes, no more. I'm really busy. In the airport lobby, we found a fast food place. Luna sat at one with her assistant, and William Anderson and I were at the next table. I waited quietly for him to speak. He took a deep breath, and after a long time of brewing, he finally opened his mouth. Yum, can you lend me a sum of money? I looked at him in surprise, and his gaze was a little evasive. I lightly tapped my index finger on the desktop and stared at him for a long time. You shouldn't be short of money. He tilted his head slightly at my questioning voice, and suddenly put his hands together to cover his face, a muffled grunt coming from his palms. Amanda Miller, I was wrong, I was really wrong. Emma is a liar, she lied about loving me, she lied about being pregnant, she lied about her education, her work history, she's a professional liar. She forced me to buy a house, a car, and jewelry with my child. I was so worn down that I used a sum of money from the company, thinking I would pay it back when the dividends came down. But the money I got out of the company, she took it out again, and now the company has started an audit ahead of schedule, and the division of labor has yet to be determined. If anyone finds out, it's all over, Amanda Miller. You're the only one who can help me now. We're a married couple. I'm begging you. He looked at the man in front of him, his eyes red and his pupils bloodshot. I don't see any of my old energy anymore. I was a bit amused, a husband and wife, so it is used in this way. He's still rambling. He was still rambling on, spitting on Emma's heartlessness, while reminiscing about our past. I stood up and interrupted him. I'm sorry, I can't help you. I've invested all my money in a house in the suburbs. It's going to be mine and Luna's home from now on. I've been shopping around for a long time, and I'm just chomping at the bit to get it. I wouldn't lend him a dime if I had the money. Now William Anderson, he'll have to fend for himself. It's not wrong for people to pay for their own desires. But back then, we were still intimate. Come on, I said, as I got up, took Luna, and headed out the door. William Anderson's mouth twitched, trying to say something. William Anderson's mouth quirked, trying to say something, but in the end he bowed his head and said nothing. Later on, I heard that Mr. and Mrs. Gu sold their house. They emptied their pension fund. They barely managed to plug the hole for William Anderson. However, the company eventually found out about it, and for various reasons, the company did not pursue his legal responsibility, but dismissed him directly. After William Anderson was free, he began to send me messages every day and every night, confessing his faults. He confessed his faults and missed the good old days when we were a family of 3. I took them as a joke and deleted them after laughing at them. Soon after, I met Gu's father and mother in the supermarket. Their hair had turned white, as if they had aged 10 years. They were picking and choosing vegetables in the discount section. They complained to each other from time to time, which was saddening. Luna is in elementary school and has adapted well to her new environment. Compared to a year ago, she is more cheerful, enthusiastic, and generous. I, on the other hand, have to start the renovation work of the villa again. This time, I'm going to make a big check room. I'm going to put my favorite bathtub in the bathroom. I'm going to fill the patio with flowers, fruits, and trees, and hang a little swing. Next spring, this place will be beautiful. And,